All right. So first, I wanted to give just a little bit of an overview of the event, talk about the conservation district, and then I'll share information about our speakers. The speakers will talk, and then we'll have the question and discussion section. Oh, that's not what I was trying to do. On Zoom. There we go. All right, so the Conservation District. So we're the Windham County Natural Resources Conservation District. We serve Windham County and just a little bit outside of it. Heather can talk more about the district from her end, but in general, we want to connect people to organizations and resources that they need. So that can be like this talk where we have groups of different partners that come and educate us. That can also be going to site visits and talking about specifically one-on-one what sort of issues they're having. And we're trying to work on creating a lot of educational resources and outreach. That way, even if we can't reach you through this fun online form, we can also have flyers. And as always, we have our annual plant sale coming up, and I'll put that information in the chat when we're towards the end here, because that's how a lot of people know about us. As I said, we work with partner organizations, and one of them, the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, helped fund this webinar. So our speakers for today, we've got Anika Fuller and Sonia Howlett from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. And then we have Emma Keister, who is with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And then lastly, we've got Heather Blanc. So she's also with the Windham County Conservation District. And I can stop sharing if we want. I'll give the floor to Anika. I think she will be handling the presentation part of the VAFM, the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, this to present.
Hello, so I am Anika Fuller. I'm the AmeriCorps member with the Water Quality Division at the Agency of Ag, and I'll be talking about the grants we have to offer. Sonia Howlett is also on the call, and she's a grant manager to a couple of grants I'll be mentioning. Share my screen.
Anika, I don't know if it's just me, but your audio is not coming in super clear.
Okay. This computer has some problems. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So again, I'm Anika. I am the AmeriCorps member with the Agency of Ag and the Water Quality Division. And then Sonia is also here, and she is a grant manager for a couple of the grants that I'll be talking about. I'll share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Oh, looks good.
So first, you can hear about our funding opportunities and any updates we have through our social media and Ag Review, but also, of course, your local conservation districts can help you find the right agency of ag grant for you. And if you have any infrastructure or engineering projects, you can contact us and we can have someone to be sent out to you. And then, of course, also we have our website, which is agriculture.vermont.gov, which you can see here. And you can find the Water Quality Division and then click on the Assistant program. It will take you to this page that lists all of our current grant opportunities, and you can peruse accordingly. And if you find one that you're interested in, there are some general forms and requirements that most, if not all, of our grants have. So each grant does have an online application that you can fill out, or you can print out and then send to us through the mail. There is more paperwork for certain grants than others, like our equipment grant, to which you can include a narrative and a letter of support, but once you are selected for a grant, we will need a W-9 if it's your first grant with us, and you'll need to sign the grant agreement, of course, send a certificate of insurance, and have a good standing form. And some grants require you to send in claim forms and maps after you complete the certain practices that we ask for those grants. What grants do we have right now? The first one with the most pressing application deadline is our Farm Agronomic Practices Grant, which wants to fund soil-based practices that improve soil quality, increase crop production, and reduce erosion and waste discharges. The funding cap for this program will increase starting July 1st of this year from $8,000 to $10,000, so that's exciting. And the different practices are listed here, and you get paid based on the different practice, and then it's totaled through each practice. Payment is for each acreage that you do that practice on. The payment rates range from $15 an acre to $45 an acre, depending on the practice. And this program requires you to send in a claim form and maps after you install the practices, and a staff member will come visit to see how the installation went of whichever practice you choose. Rotational grazing has the most pressing deadline right now, which is June 15th. But the application deadline for fall practices like cover cropping and manure injection is also coming up, and it's on August 1st. And then the spring practice deadline, if you're implementing practices like no-till or crop to hay, is April 5th. Our next grant is for equipment that reduces surface runoff of agricultural waste to water, improves water quality, reduces odor from manure application, separates phosphorus from manure, decreases greenhouse gas emissions, and reduces costs to farms when they apply manure. This program has funded equipment like no-till drills and manure injectors, along with many other types of equipment. This application is due in November and asks for more paperwork than some of the other programs you're applying, like a letter of support. And it also requires 3 years of annual reporting back to us so we know you're using equipment. The next grant we have is the Best Management Practices Grant, which helps with on-farm improvements. Sorry, my neighbor, I don't know if you can hear that, but my neighbors are getting something delivered. So just let me know if I need to pause. So the Best Management Practices Grant helps with on-farm improvements to stop non-point source agricultural waste discharges into water. This program can be used in conjunction with the NRCS EQIP program contracts, so more of your project can be paid for rather than coming out of your own pocket. This program can also provide technical assistance around water quality compliance consultations and permitting and other assistance. It can also be used for engineering services that are not connected with the NRCS EQIP program. You can see some of the different projects that we can help cover. And the application is accepted on a rolling basis, but the priority deadline is April 1st. Our next grant program is the Pasture and Surface Water Fencing Program, which can provide pasture management, technical and financial assistance to improve water quality and on-farm livestock exclusion from surface water. You can get up to $10,000 if your livestock doesn't need to be excluded from surface water, but you do want to implement or improve rotational grazing. And you can get up to $15,000 when the project is about livestock exclusion from surface water. This project can also provide no-cost pasture management technical assistance, and the applications are accepted on a rolling basis. Next, we have our grass waterway and filter strip grant that provides technical and financial assistance to farmers for in-field agronomic practices that addresses erosion, surface runoff, and critical source areas, which are croplands that represent a small portion of the landscape, but a high portion of non-point source pollution load. And this program can pay $500 per acre and 90% of the installation costs for establishing perennially vegetated grass waterways, filter strips, critical source area seeding, and associated infrastructure on agriculture cropland adjacent to surface water and ditches. And under this program, all the practices implemented can be harvested, which is different than a lot of our other programs. We partner with FSA for our Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, which provides financial assistance for farms wanting to remove land from agricultural production and or establish vegetative buffers. The contracts for these are 15 years and applications are accepted on a rolling basis. Finally, one of our newest programs is the Pay for Performance program, which pays farms based on a reduction of phosphorus losses from their fields. And we do this based by looking at the practices implemented on fields and the nutrient management plans. It's a 5-year project that started in 2022 and plans to allocate $4.9 million directly to producers. And the application window for this program is January 2nd through the 20th. And you can find who to contact based on which program you want to do on our website, which again is agriculture.vermont.gov. And here is mine and Sonia's contact information. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. There's so many more programs that you think you know them all, and then you hear more. So I'm glad that I learned something. I'm going to put up my screen for Emma. We can do questions at the end, and people can also put them in the chat. I meant to mention that. Sure again. Okay, so next we have Emma Keister. So she's with the Natural Resources Conservation Service.
And if I can actually share a slideshow.
Okay.
I'll
let you.
I was able to.
There we go. Should be able to now.
Oops. Let's see. Okay, can you all see that?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so I just kind of wanted to go over the application process for the USDA and the Natural Resource Conservation Services. So how the NRCS or the Natural Resource Conservation Services functions is that we want to help producers or landowners help the land. So we want to try to address the resource concerns that come up and help give funding to address those things. So the way to enter into our programs is that first we need, First, we need to have an application put forward. The way we handle that in the South is that you put in a conservation technical assistance request, and that is that CTA request form. I recommend if you have any inkling that you want to take part with the NRCS to put that in as soon as possible. That way we can start you working on your applicability details and your eligibility with the FSA, which is our Farm Service Agency. Even if you're working in forestry ground, we still need to have a farm that is set up with the Farm Service Agency in order to pull your land into our program. So you can submit those requests at any time to me. I did put my email down at the bottom as well as my phone number in case anybody at any time wants to grab that information. Or if you want, you could also message me directly in the Zoom call and I can take your email down and send you some of the information of what you need to do to get started. We can accept those deliveries in any way. We can get them hand delivered, fax, in the mail, scanned. You can call me up and I can take that information down so that you're in our system and we can start. Right now, all of our application deadlines for the fiscal year 2023 have closed. We do have some organic programs opening up. So if you're interested in transitioning to organic, feel free to give me a call and we can talk about that. I don't have any further details on that to share right now, but there are things that are opening up. So like I said, try to submit those requests as soon as possible, just so we have your name on the books. Like I was saying, you do have to get eligibility through the Farm Service Agency. There are several forms to fill out, but the main limiting factor is you need to sign and say that you're making less than $900,000 a year. We do need to establish those records with the FSA as soon as possible. That can be something that holds back the application process if we don't get those started as soon as possible. And the other thing we need to do is verify that there aren't highly erodible lands that you're negatively affecting. And if you do have highly erodible lands, there are things to do to mitigate that. We just have to come up with a conservation plan and also determine if there are any wetlands on the area to make sure that we're not converting a wetland from a forested wetland to a ag system, because we can't accept agricultural goods off of a wetland because we don't want to see those converted. The different programs we have, our main one that we really help people address resource concerns is our environmental quality incentives program. That one, we identify a resource concern, gully erosion, a forage and feed imbalance, so potentially putting up fencing and helping with the livestock operation, putting cover crops out to address the resource concerns of soil health, so encouraging to always have the ground covered at all times, having a living root in the soil, reducing disturbances, and seeing some more biological or biodiversity on the ground is what we really want to address with that program. Once somebody has addressed their resource concerns or most of their resource concerns and already has a conservation or regenerative ag concept going on the ground, we can go into the conservation stewardship program that allows for people to receive a rental rate to reward them for the conservation they're currently doing, but we still have to be doing some innovative practices. So if you're doing cover crops, we're doing a more advanced cover crop and different practices like that. Or if it's a forestry setting, you've already done the brush management, now we want to see some timber stand improvement and some tree girdling in order to encourage the stand production or mass trees. We also have our AMA programs, that's the Agricultural Management Assessment Program. It's gonna offer funding for things that are managing current issues. So we could offer high tunnels in order to extend growing seasons for crops. We also have our Regional Conservation Partnership Program. It functions much like the EQIP program, except the funding is going to come from a lot of different partners. So that program tends to have a lot of focused goals. They'll come out with a specialized list of practices we can fund in that program. For example, this year we were funding all of our grazing applications through that in order to improve water quality. But again, that functions a lot like EQIP. And when you submit an application through the NRCS, we're going to help you find the program that's best going to fund your practice. It's not that you have to pick out which one of these best works for you. We can help you figure out which ones work best. We also have a conservation easement program. So that's going to allow you to receive a payment for inputting all of your ground into, or the ground that's chosen into this easement, and it covers a couple of different aspects. Again, if you're interested in that, it'd be best to call me and talk to me. I don't know that that's best to go over in this quick overview. It looks like this goes through what I just went through, but these go over the different programs. And if you want, I can send this to individuals as well. Going through the AMA and the RCPP and the ASEP. This one does go over the different land types that were eligible for that easement. So like prime, unique, and other productive soils down at the bottom, parcels enrolled to provide protection for grazing uses. Then also historical or archaeological resources, or ones that further the state or local policy consistent with the purposes of the ASEP ALE. We've got some more easements for wetland reserves. Once you put in an application, they're always competitive, and this is a cost share program. So we're going to talk about giving a percentage back to you. There is an expectation that the landowner is going to upfront some of the cost. But if you are a historically underserved participant, you are making below a certain threshold, you've just started farming within the last 10 years, I'm missing one. You fall under the other categories of historically underserved, then you do get a higher cost share rate. So there's a potential that you would end up getting enough money to cover the practice at that point. The way our practice money is delegated as well is that the state comes out with the price that they're willing to pay. And then that's what you get. So going into the contract, you will know how much money you will get per unit of completed item. So if it pays $200 per acre and you complete 1 acre, you will get the $200 as long as it's certifiable to the NRCS standards for that 1 acre. But like I was saying, these are all going to be ranked against all of the other applications in the state. One of the way to ensure that your application is competitive is to do as many practices as you're willing to. That is something that tends to get people to rank higher. So if you want to do forestry work, being able to do habitat as well as some forest stand improvement can have an effect, but it is also given more points based on whether you're in a specific watershed or in a certain side of the state. So sometimes we don't really have an effect on how those things ranked with different people. And we've already hit most of our ranking and assessment periods for this year, but that means that it's the perfect time for everybody to put their grants in so that we can do the site visits and start working for fiscal year 2024 funding. Whenever your contract does rank high enough that it meets the cutoff and will be considered for funding, then we will obligate that contract. It's important not to start any of the practices until you have a contract that is obligated. Up until the point of obligation, you can always pull out, but once we obligate the contract, it's a contract. You are then obligated to follow through with it. And we do have to see a practice that's completed in the first 12 months. Let's see. And we do want to see those practices, and you will be given the standards for this, but you would want to complete the practice to the NRCS standards and specifications. Sometimes that means that it's above and beyond what you normally see in the industry standards. So it's important to recognize what those differences are before you sign the contract and really know what you're getting into with them as well. Then we'll come out and certify that the practice meets our standards. We'll pay you on that. Our payment usually comes after the bills. It is still your responsibility to pay the bills on time, depending on whatever you work out with your contractor, but we would then reimburse that cost share after we're able to certify the practice. When, or if you need those payments to come in advance, we can do a 50% advance payment for the people who are historically underserved specifically. I believe, and Josh can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's only for our historically underserved clients. And that is one way to mitigate the issues of not having that upfront capital in order to pay the contracts on time or the contractors on time. So up here is the contact information. Like I said, my contact information is still at the bottom there, but feel free to contact any of us if you, and I specifically to the community house. If you're interested in any outreach events or have any ideas of how the NRCS could potentially work with you, then Josh would be somebody who you might want to reach out to. He's our outreach coordinator. Otherwise, I can be the main contact in the office. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions. The number at the bottom is my cell phone, is my government cell phone. So feel free to reach out at any time. And I think that's my spiel.
Thanks, Emma. Is there anything you want to say, Josh, not to put you on the spot, but if anything you wanted to add there?
So nothing to add, but just kudos to Emma for covering all this information so concisely and clearly. And as she stated, if you have questions or concerns, just give us a buzz and we're willing to work with you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. All right, so our last presenter is Heather Blunk with the Windham County Natural Resources Conservation District. So I'll let Heather take it away.
Hi all, like Isabel said, I am the Agricultural Outreach Specialist for the Windham County NRCD. And I feel like I'm learning so much today because I already have questions for Emma and Annika, so I'll hold them off till later. Primarily, I'm going to be talking about American Farmland Trust grants, but the Conservation District doesn't really hold any grants per se. We do have some programming we could help with. But like Isabel touched on earlier, our main job is if you reach out to us, we know almost all the programs happening in the state. and can get you pointed or connected in the right direction. However, I do want to talk about a few programs. One being the American Farmland Trust, RCPP. So like Emma talked about, this is in partnership with NRCS, and you would apply through NRCS, but we have a 90% cost share, and next year it's going to be up to 100% cost share, which is pretty exciting, as opposed to the 60 or 70% that NRCS typically covers. This RCPP is based off of soil health and water quality. You do have to have livestock in order to qualify, but after that, we have a whole slew of practices that's really all encompassing. And I can try to put that flyer in the chat. Usually that works. It's not as detailed of a flyer as I would like it to be. However, it does go over the basics. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me about those. Another really awesome resource from American Farmland Trust is their micro grants. I will put, nope, that's the next thing I'm going to talk about, but I'll put this one in the chat. I really love this program because it's money. You have to have livestock again, but it's pretty relaxed as to what you can use it for. There's going to be a couple of bigger grants for $10,000, and then they'll do more grants at $5,000. And again, you're not really tied to certain practices. You do have to be within a certain realm of regenerative farming practices, but it's kind of nice that you're not tied to a certain program. So those are really fantastic as well. And that one you just apply straight through American Farmland Trust. The next one that I want to touch on is Northeast SARE, Sustainable Agriculture and Research Education. They have a grant, and this one's a little different. It's for research or education. So if you have if you've had your eye on a certain crop or a certain style of farming that's not popular in Vermont, Northeast SARE can help you support it, help get it started. So again, this is really cool, pretty innovative, and you get to decide how you use the money. SARE will help direct you and tell you if it's innovative in their mind or not. But again, it's a really cool opportunity, and if you have an interesting idea, might be a way to help get you some funding for that. There's another RCPP with Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC. I don't know a ton about it. It happened 2022 through 2023. I'm not positive if they're going to reopen it for next year, but if they do, it's another great opportunity. That was 100% cost share as well, and focused on water quality and whatnot. So keep your eye out for that as well. That's all of the main ones I want to talk about. Each month I do send out funding newsletter. It's just everything. Sorry, my dogs are jealous that they can't be in this meeting right now. You might hear them in the background. But it's a newsletter that just shows everything that's open right now in the state or through NRCS. So I can put you on our newsletter list if you want to receive that as well. But yeah, that's all I had to share.
Thank you. Yeah, the district is a little bit different. Obviously, we don't hold the grants, but we are supposed to be here to connect you with all the things you need. I'm going to put add even more to the chat. I'm going to put the plant sale ordering on there. I believe tomorrow's the last day, Corey, that people can order, if I'm not mistaken. And plants are picked up on May 6th at Green Mountain Orchards.
Yes, tomorrow's the last day for online sales, but you can still order, but you can shop in person on Saturday, May 6th from 9 a.m. to noon. And we do have quite a bit of stuff left that'll be available for same day purchase.
Great. yeah, so if you are wanting to plant something that's good for the environment, all of them are native species. So check that out. I'm going to share the post survey, even though we're not done. I want to make sure I get it in there before we get into discussion. But I guess I'll start by opening the floor to anyone that has questions. You can unmute or put it in the chat. We can go from there. Go ahead, Heather.
Thanks. I didn't want to jump in front of if anyone else had a question, because I know I'm a TA person, but I'm still learning. So my first question will be for Annika or Sonia, because I just learned about this. So I want to clarify. In order to participate in any of the state programs you all talked about, you have to be enrolled in the required agricultural practices, the RAPs. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I know Saren kind of commented on this earlier too. So, and it's, I will say, an internal topic of conversation as well, because there's things that come to us from the state, from the legislature, and then we're like, does this really make sense? Anyway, but yes, so in the water quality division, which is what we're talking about right now, our money comes from mostly from the legislature and is mostly tied into like our, water quality related money. And part of that means it's the kind of the flip side of our regulatory requirements. So we, the legislature gives us regulatory requirements to uphold, and then it also gives us money to help people get to a better place water quality wise. With that in mind, yes, the same required sizes that apply for, you're definitely have to do these regulatory things is also the threshold they've set for payments. So that we call that being a small farm operation. And probably the lowest threshold bar that people get to is if you make $2,000 in agricultural sales each year. You are a small farm operation. That means the RAPs apply to you and you're eligible for grants. Filing a 1040F, so that's the farming IRS tax form at the end of the year, also makes you a small farm operation. Again, eligible for grants, but also subject to the RAPs directly. Otherwise, right, you get into like 4 acres of annual crop, 4 acres of pasture with at least, for either 4 cows or 4 horses or 15 sheep or goats or pigs. I know it's all online at SFO, but what that maybe excludes is really small market gardens that aren't necessarily making that much money yet or are a nonprofit. The nonprofit space is really interesting there because most of that is tied around kind of sales, right? You can also, if you're planning to maybe make $2,000 in sales in the future, you can submit a business plan now to say, hey, we're gonna be a farm. Can you just call us a farm now? And the answer is yes. So yes, that is a requirement, but like CSA, or no, not CSAs, community gardens, right, are an example where like our hands are a little tied in terms of like, it doesn't really fit into our system. It's an interesting element, but yes, that is the minimum size. NRCS, interestingly, doesn't have that same requirement that I know of. I feel like NRCS, you have a more comprehensive understanding of like what you're calling urban agriculture or like really small scale ag. But yeah, it's the way it is. Interestingly, I'll just say something I think about in my job is, again, in the water quality division, a lot of our grant really do scale with size in a way that I don't think is particularly like supportive of smaller operations, knowing that you all have to put a lot more effort in to get the same work done. But the reasoning for that is, again, because it's all water quality money. So like, 50 acres of annual cropland have 50 times more ability to have runoff than 1 acre of annual cropland. So someone at some point thought it made sense to just have the payments go linearly as well, which is not at all responsive to like economic or social realities, but is very like environmentally driven. We didn't talk at all today about the agricultural development grants that the state runs. Again, if you, I'd say like typically in all of this, your first point of contact is your conservation district, and then you know, farm viability is a other good point of contact of these like centralizing people who you can talk to about, you know, this is my plan, whatever. Ag dev, I'm really jealous of because they are able to like be a little more comprehensive in what they're looking at. They're not so tied to like, you know, linear assessments of impact, and their grants are much more competitive. So that's where you end up in the like ranking, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe they do or don't fund you. Water quality, we tend to be able to like offer grants to just about anyone who comes who can demonstrate an impact for most of our grant programs, but it's the payment rate which I would consider not particularly like responsive. So anyway, those are my thoughts there.
Thanks, Sonia, for clarifying that up for me. And then I did just also want to throw out that I have to unfortunately hop off at 10:50, but if there are questions for me, I bet Isabel or Corey could probably cover it, or they'll definitely let me know and I can email you later about the answers.
Any other questions from people?
There's some in the chat about invasives removal, which the district does have some programming on. And then potentially we'll let you know, we're in the works of submitting a local fund pool proposal, which gets slightly complicated, but in summary, it would be a way to apply and only be ranked in Windham County that might help invasives, but that should be determined. And then riparian buffer plantings, again, is something the district can help establish.
Great. Yeah.
On the riparian buffer planting, if you are working specifically with a farm, and there are, I think, often opportunities for like the farm to apply for funds to receive money, and then the nonprofit could like help install it or help in that way. But again, I think the districts are probably a good place to start pointing people towards what makes sense.
I agree. Yeah, Emma just talked about this last night, so you can go.
I was also going to say, if there's if it was historically crop ground, there is also the potential that could be enrolled in an FSA program that does easement stuff with riparian buffers, but it does have to have been cropped within the last 6 years for 4 years. So that is something that might be hard to meet here. As ground that also they want to take out of production. We do also have the EQIP program, and that will treat invasives. It'll pay for up to 3 years of brush management or herbaceous weed control in areas. So again, feel free to send me a conservation technical assistance request or email me.
Great. So I'm looking back at the chat and I saw that we had someone interested about grants for equipment, and I know that that is something that is done. Anyone want to hop on how to start with that process?
Annika, you want to take this one, or I can?
Sure. So we do have our YEEP program, which briefly mentions that is for equipment that will aid in the reduction of surface runoff. So there are like about 5 categories where this equipment would need to fall into: the precision agriculture, conservation tillage, cover crop equipment, waste management, or feed management. And that application is due November 1st. It is one of Sonia's grants that she manages.
Yeah, so the capital equipment assistance program, I said most of our grants are relatively non-competitive. SEPA is probably the exception. So basically it funds like no-till grain drills, no-till planters or planter attachments that help you transition to no-till. It can fund, historically in waste management, we mostly funded manure injectors. We've gotten more interpretive of that in recent years, and we funded a few compost spreaders, wood ash, she spreaders, precision fertilizer, etc. And then, feed management's often been a transition to growing or planting more hay as opposed to corn. We have funded veggie farms every year. It is ranked, but the grant amount and the size you're using it on kind of is like calculated together. So I'd say typically if you're using it on fewer acres and are applying for a cheaper piece of equipment, it works out. And you aren't like too disincentivized from that. So we've bought like a couple of really interesting like no-till planters for small veggie farms in the past. Just if anyone's curious about that, I can send you to some of the people who've done it. Yeah, it's a good program. Again, you do have to be somehow meeting that farm characterization, but you apply, you write a little letter saying why you need it and what it's going to do for water quality, because again, all our money is coming from water quality, and you do get a quote, and that's kind of what you do to get started. Let us know what you're asking for. Yes, and thank you for the rentals, Heather. That's a great thing to talk about.
Yeah, I was going to say SEPA is fantastic, definitely worth applying to if you needed something this year or a bit shorter notice. There's 2 equipment rental programs that allow our district people who live in Windham County to rent from them. Cheshire Conservation District over in New Hampshire allows us to rent from them. And then Connecticut River Watershed Farmers Alliance also has some equipment. I don't think they have anything online, but I can send you that information if you want it. Downside with rentals, everyone uses the same equipment at the same time of year. So competitive in that manner. But great opportunities if you need something kind of shorter notice.
Yeah, thank you for putting that more in the chat. So I also wanted to ask for the people who are here if there was any, I'll let Seren ask her question first, their question first.
Oh, sorry I could totally wait until you were done, but I actually just wanted to ask Emma really quick. So I sent out an email to Eric, I think, at FSA to like get kind of like established with them in order to apply for some funding. But should I still just like, even though that's not actually done, still start like getting that all set up with you? Should I just do them in tandem? Should I do them both at the same time?
Yeah. You can send me an email just to get you on my books, because I can have that CTA request in without the official farm record set up, but that way you have met the deadlines. There's no question.
Love it. I will totally email you and get that CTA set up.
Josh, I know the deadline for NICS just passed, or maybe out, Emma, but the CSP program, have you been talking about that in your county?
I've been talking about it. It hasn't come up, well, maybe I'll let Josh talk first. Like he had something to say.
Well, as it relates to CSP, I can say this office has definitely been pushing it relatively hard. And there are folks who are interested, but at the same time, knowing that CSP is not for everyone just yet. Consider it more of the Cadillac of our programs. You have to be at a specific threshold to be eligible for that program, but we are relaying it as an option, because I would say it would be good to consider CSP, even starting just to do a full swath or a full assessment of your property, and then taper back from there to see what programs are applicable, and then work your way back towards CSP, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so my understanding, not from NRCS, is that CSP is like when you're in a really good place with water quality. A lot of other grants are kind of trying to help you improve, whereas CSP is like you're already doing pretty well. It takes a fair amount of planning work, but what comes out is really useful because it could maybe show you like where there's gaps. And the minimum payment per year is $1,500, so that's nice when you're smaller. I'm not sure, in the past, there hadn't been a lot of ranking. I think this year they got a lot more applications because of the push that Josh and others spearheaded. So it seems like, it sounded to me like maybe they were going to be in a place where they had to choose more than they had in the past. But in the past, it had been, in Vermont at least, like pretty much like once you are at that high level, they were writing you grants if you met all the criteria. And this year and next year, the state of Vermont is supporting people to go through the planning portion of that with a $2,000 payment one time for the planning effort in that first year. And then potentially also if you sign a contract as an additional payment. So again, I think it's a good time to be thinking about that if you feel like your land base is in a pretty good place. So I think that it may be too late for right now for CSP, but I think it seems it comes around every year. So something to think about. And as you get signed up with FSA and all the other things you need to do to work with NRCS.
And just so folks are aware, the Inflation Reduction Act is definitely going to be advocating and soliciting quite a bit of money to rural communities. And we're going to have specific funding pools. So with NCSP, considered a funding pool specific to the Inflation Reduction Act. So we'll have general CSP, we'll have our renewals for folks who are renewing past applications and continuing in that program, as well as CSP IRA or Inflation Reduction Act with its own pot of funding. So it's definitely going to be some support coming for the next good little while.
That's also helpful. Thank you so much, Sonia and Josh. That's super, super helpful.
I'm going to put up our last slide, which is just the more pushing our post-event survey. But I also wanted to ask people about what sort of things that they would be interested in from here on out. The district was thinking of doing sort of a drop-in grant writing help hours, but we want to do what's helpful to people. So are there other things you can think of that you would want, or maybe help that you haven't seen covered in this talk that would be beneficial to you? And I should say that in this event form, there's space for writing that. So if you definitely don't want to be put on the spot now, or don't have that thought fully thought out because you just had a lot of information, you can fill it out then. But I'll leave the slide up and I'll keep it open. But definitely if you need to leave, you can head out. But I want to make sure everyone can look in the chat because there's lots of great resources. I can send out the recording to everybody who registered for the event, and I'll pull together the slides and other resources that we talked about today and send an email to everybody.
Thanks, Isabel.
Thanks, Emma. We have someone fan of drop-in hours. So the idea will be that we'll host them at a public place like library or something where there's a computer and access to lots of different resources, and we can help walk through grant opportunities. But we do also, as I mentioned and Heather mentioned, the district does do one-on-one. We can come to your property and talk about issues or your dreams, whatever you want to talk about, and we can hopefully find grants for that. Obviously, what you heard today covers what we usually do, but if it's not covered, we can help you. So I'm gonna.
And I guess I want to throw out a PSA real quick of if anybody has any of those agricultural ideas that are innovative, a little off the wall, some way that they're helping the environment while still producing food and producing off of their land. If you bring that to the NRCS office, maybe we can see where there's funding for it in the future and opportunities to work that into our current things. Sometimes we get stuck in a bubble of this is what everybody's asking for, so that's what we're providing for producers. But if there's a producer out there who has an innovation, there's nothing to say that might not currently exist in our abilities or be something we can add into our future abilities with helping people.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good point, because the local fund pool, the way it was set up is so that we can get information from people and directly talk with. We had NRCS there, so we were able to talk with them about what they do offer, what they don't offer, or what they've been thinking about. So bringing it up, it will bring it to our attention. So we'd love to hear that. All right, as we are at time, I'm going to stop the sharing and recording, but thank you